Oh, yeah, g'day.
Yeah, podcast, coronavirus podcast. Beep, 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 beep. Special podcast coming from you from fucking Melbourne. And where else are we?
We've got a special
New York.
guest. New York.
Matt Witkowski from New York. Concrete jungle where dreams are made of. Dreams will inspire you.
That's what the whole podcast is going to be.
Coronavirus will fucking kill you.
Yeah, righto.
Matt, how are you?
Good, yeah, good. It's been busy.
Yeah. So
the city's pretty quiet. Yeah.
Yeah, city's quiet. So tell us what you're doing, your title, what you're doing in New York where dreams are made of.
I came here in 2015 to do a postdoc. I finished my PhD in Melbourne.
Your lord.
At the Walter and Eliza Hall Institute, which is just across the road from Melbourne Uni. And I worked on leukemia there, got a gig in New York, and I work at the NYU School of Medicine.
So when you got the gig in New York, it was doing leukemia still.
Yeah. I wasn't preemptively planning for this COVID-19.
Are you sure you weren't involved?
And then,
Were you eating bats, Matt?
that you
You
know.
dirty dog.
Hey, China, I'm your man.
Impossible. Basically, for the last 5 years, I've been working on how the bone marrow protects leukemia from chemotherapy. And actually, on Easter Sunday, my publication was accepted for publication.
Oh, your lord.
So that should come out in a couple of months. But that's been really not the priority since, I want to say, probably mid-March, NYU got hit with testing. And then what happened was one of the pathology department leaders, this guy, Matthias Schnodel.
What a sick name.
He sort of, Slovenian guy. He's like Tegel.
Oh, God.
So he turns around, just for all the listeners out there, real deep cut with the Tegel reference.
Yeah, 7 people are going to understand that.
And so he emailed around NYU saying, like, this corona thing is really going to kick off.
But was this, and what? And this is happening mid-March.
The testing was only really just started then, and it probably should have started in February or even January. But that's like something to go into the speed of the response. It's like having been in the testing facilities, you just see what a slow response looks like. And this one's slow.
Yeah. What was this a slow response? Like, people were generally aware of coronavirus. What, the end of Jan? I reckon I was already seeing things seeing things, and I was like one of the naysayers. I was like, it'll be all right. Yeah, it should be all right. But then I remember my birthday, start of Feb, I was talking to a friend of ours, and I was like, this is gonna hit us real bad. And she's like, oh yeah, deaths, most deaths. And that was like February. It was the start of Feb.
I mean, for the WHO, they knew about it in late December. So China had reported it in late December. And that was even there's a lot of innuendo, or it's not fact yet on how China reported it. It's kind of a dodgy area right now because the way that it happened, I mean, everyone's speculating how it started. People want it to be every conspiracy in the world, right?
We'll get to that.
I was going to say that.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, but coronaviruses have happened before. SARS is a coronavirus.
Yes.
And, the origin doesn't really matter right now. It's the response that matters. And then after it, there'll be a lot more investigation, you'd hope. Of course, people are blaming wet markets in China, and I'm not surprised.
What's a wet market?
They're bad. A wet market's like a live animal trade, essentially, in China, and it's not well regulated from a health perspective.
All right, well,
it's a good reason.
Let's quickly just jump into the conspiracy. So, do you think it came from a bat / Pokemon / wet market, or is that is that what we think?
At the moment, the politician answer I'll give you is probably the evidence is pointing to that. However, you don't want to get caught in a situation where you're throwing around blame just yet, because there's still people going down from this.
And that's why you're right, 100%. Because I love me some conspiracy theories, but some of the ones that I hear now, I'm like, they're not helpful right now. They're not helpful. And, you want to talk about the Earth being flat, or you want to talk about...
That's when people do it, though.
Yeah, but it's not the time. It's just not...
But they're not thinking about being helpful.
No, I know.
I don't think.
Yeah.
I think it's a selfish thing.
Yeah.
Conspiracy theorists. They're like, look at me, look at this theory that I've come up with.
But
it's got nothing to do with anyone else.
Most of the time, they haven't come up with it. Most of the time, they've read one sentence on Reddit and then run with it.
Yeah.
So I am of the opinion that, it came from some sort of animal that was not dealt with properly or something like that. Is that generally what you think, Mr. Matt?
Yes. Yeah, I do. I think that there's a lot of evidence already that suggests that, indeed, this came from some kind of reservoir. So what happens is it would be a virus that is endemic to a certain species, maybe bat, and probably bat. And then there's like potentially an intermediate reservoir for the virus, and that's a different animal. It's the Pandoglin, I believe.
It's
explain that a bit.
What's it called? It's like a Pokemon. It's like a sand shrew.
Yeah. Let me just quickly pull this thing up. If you don't mind, I'll just be like 1 second. You can edit this out.
All the time in the world, mate.
Okay, so in Nature Immunology, which is one of the bigger journals when it comes to immunology, there was actually a really good article that just came out on how basically how are they going to make a vaccine against coronavirus. And they do go into some of these things. And so what happens is, like, for example, what's a great example of this? HIV is an example where there was a species that was not human that was known to harbor the virus. In that case, it would be a primate. For example.
The whole thing, someone had sex
with choppy, chimpy.
Yeah, so then they eat, the idea there was, someone chops up this chimp, eats it, I don't know, contracts HIV. I'm not so clear on that. But what I mean by a reservoir is it's like a species that's able to incubate that virus.
Right.
And it just cooks away in there. And then there is an event, usually a chance event, which allows the transmission of the virus from that species to a human. So if we're talking about this, is it Pandoglin?
Yeah, something like that.
Did someone...
Yeah,
it looks like a fucking sand shrew.
Did someone force a bat to give them head? Is that what happened?
That would be terrible.
I hope not, because there goes my Saturday. No, it's called a pangolin. So it's pangolin. I just looked it up. And so say for example it is in the pangolin, and then people use the pangolin for medicinal purposes is the idea. Or they consume it in some way
to get erections.
It goes from this. It's like it goes from this animal reservoir, which doesn't potentially harm the pangolin, to a human, where all of a sudden this virus really harms humans. It causes respiratory syndrome. And then all of a sudden, sorry, I'm going to turn off my email here. all of a sudden you have it spreading throughout humans. So it's gone from this incubator that is the pangolin to the human host. And now, as soon as we breathe it out and it's on our hands and we touch our face, if it gets into our respiratory tract, this virus really likes the human host cell.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
so without like obviously putting you on the spot or anything, so you would suggest that it probably came from the pangolin, the sand shrew, or something like that.
Yeah, I think it came from some animal host before us. I mean, that's probably not a big stretch, but it's more, I don't think right now the conspiracies of like, oh, it was bioengineered by someone and released into the community is helpful.
Yeah, I think that's what I've been saying too. It's like not helpful. Like I had one idiot say to me how this was China's plan all along to cripple Western, economies, and then they're going to take over the world. And I'm like, all that's doing at the moment is pissing you off just thinking about it. Like, it's just, I love these theories.
But
Don't worry.
People do that though because they got nothing else to do.
Yeah, but it's also you can see how people can formulate that.
Yeah, easy.
Yeah.
When it's like, I'm an idiot, I don't understand science shit, but I saw James Bond a few times. I know what's going on, cunt. They can't get one past old fucking bogan Jim Bob here.
Yeah. And that's the problem. Like, I think people often want to put a race onto these things, or they want to put something quick onto it. And I think race is a really big one to worry about right now. Is like, for example, Asian Americans. As soon as this happens, people all of a sudden are giving them shit. Asian Americans, and you look at that and you think to yourself, well, they didn't do it. This is like, surely people remember Japanese internment camps after Pearl Harbor. But immediately after the virus comes out, everyone's like, oh, fucking Asian Americans. And they're going around and they're, even, passively discriminating them, even though they're not in Wuhan.
Their family's probably been in America for like 100 years or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're probably Japanese.
They're probably
Thai.
Yeah, that's the other thing, right? It's like they just see they could be from bloody Burma for all you know, and they're just, it's like my mom. And then all of a sudden, people are discriminating there.
I mean, listen, you see some guy driving around really poorly, you think he's Chinese. What can you do?
I mean, this is more fuel to that flame, it's, and then in America, it's been pretty horrible how they've politicized it immediately. Yeah. I mean, they immediately turned on the World Health Organization.
Do you think that was wrong?
That was really wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That was the worst thing that could have happened from a policy perspective.
So you think World Health Organization have done good?
They've always done good for disease. I mean, you got to remember, like, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater there. The World Health Organization, basically, they're a group that have made huge contributions to cancer, HIV, malaria, tuberculosis, malnutrition. Like, these are the real issues in the world in terms of disease. Now, coronavirus is a pretty recent thing that's happened, and maybe they struggled with their early response. No one truly knows right now. That's what you investigate for.
Because the big thing that Trump people will say is that the World Health Organization was saying January 21st, they were still saying you can't catch it from human to human. They were saying that towards the end of Jan.
Yeah, I would take it with a grain of salt, like a lot of their comments, because a lot of their stuff is at the moment to protect his response that was slow, objectively slow.
Trump's was slow.
Trump's was extremely slow. So what happened was, sure, he keeps harping on about, I stopped people from China coming to America. But what the facts are actually the virus that's in New York City. So my university at NYU has been sequencing the virus that comes into patients, that's present in patients in New York. And in fact, the genetics of the virus that's in New York are from Europe. So there is the strain of virus is actually European that's sort of permeated through New York. Now, in response to that report in the New York Times, so the director of our genomics facility, Adriana Heggie here, publishes or releases information to the community saying, yeah, as much as we're giving Wuhan the shit right now, it's the virus that we're getting is probably from Europe somewhere. Someone's come back from Italy or Spain, potentially, and it's spread around through no fault of their own. They probably just didn't know they had it.
Yeah.
And then it's caused this problem. So then what Trump does, they release this in the New York Times. Trump's first response is the standard. Everything's fake. New York Times is a hoax. This is the classic Democrats trying to do it. Now, I know these people that sequence the virus. They don't have any
political affiliation,
dog in the fight, really. They just want to get the fact out there that you can't blame everything on that. And if Trump's whole platform is, I stop people from China getting here, well, that doesn't matter if it's come from Europe.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
And that's proof that he just didn't act properly. And there's plenty of reasons.
You would have seen it. It's been doing the rounds. There's that timeline of Trump where he's saying it's like mid-Jan. He's like, what's going to happen is we're going to get one case and then it's just going to, like a miracle, boom, it's just going to disappear. And then in February...
There's 15 people, it's going to become 0.
Exactly.
Cheers.
And then in February's like, it's going to be gone like this. It's just going to go. And the hotter weather, it's just going to go.
I
was the first one to call it a fucking pandemic.
The most interesting thing there is the fact that he's the president. Not actually what he's saying. Because he's an idiot. Like, he's a moron. The fact that he was voted into American, like, to be the leader of America is the more interesting fact there. Yep. You know what I mean? Like, and that
there's a problem with this too, from a political point of view. There's this rallying around the flag concept that
people relate to him.
Yeah,
but the rallying around the flag thing, that you're going to get into. America love doing that, and we're seeing a bit of it with Australia as well. You've got so many people telling us now, Scott Morrison's doing pretty good. Yeah. It's like he's doing the bare expected.
Yes.
He's doing the expected.
Yes.
He's doing what...
If you had someone that was a good leader in one of these crises...
They'd be doing better.
They would be so active.
Yeah.
They would be in front of like the camera all the time and they would be giving updates.
But that's not something, because Trump's in front of the camera all the time.
But...
His ratings are
the best. He's not giving updates.
His ratings are the best. His ratings are better than Bachelor.
But if you're actually giving facts and giving real things for the public to learn from, not just like, don't worry, we're on top of it. We got this. Yeah. Like, that's nothing. Yeah. Just because you're saying the same thing 50 times, that's not helping. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Cuomo is the great example of that. So Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, is very fact-driven. He just puts up graphs and he says, all right, today we lost 800 people. Hospitalizations are dropping, but we're still losing a lot of people. That's usually a 2-week lag from when they came in, but we still have to stay away from one another. City's in lockdown. I can go to get groceries and I can go to test people, which is in the building I live in. So it doesn't affect me. I can basically shut myself off from the world and it doesn't matter.
Cuomo did a status. He did a status about 12 hours ago or 20 hours ago saying all New Yorkers have to wear gloves and masks when they leave the house.
Yep. So we all wear it. Like, I wear it everywhere.
So what are your thoughts on that? Because there's conflicting things about they don't help and they do help. And as soon as if you're wearing gloves is worse than actually having your hands, because you can wash your hands, you don't wash gloves.
Sure. The gloves thing, I mean, that's more recent. I think the mask is very good. So what the mask is primarily designed to do is prevent, if you have it, from creating an aerosol that spreads. So it's not about stopping. Partially it's about stopping it coming in, but mostly it's about stopping it going out.
Do they stop being as useful after like an hour, 2 hours, or are they good pretty much?
Yeah, the best mask is called the N95, which has more persistent action. So it's designed for prolonged use.
Yeah.
Whereas like if I use cloth or a scarf or anything, it probably isn't as effective, but still it's something.
Better than nothing.
It's better than nothing.
And that's what's confusing people, because you're wearing the mask and I've had this argument with people. They go, why wear it? It doesn't stop you from getting it. And it's like, that's what's confusing people. It's actually, you're doing it for your other humans. You're doing it to not infect other people in case you might have it.
And that's a bit of a foreign topic for society,
especially our society
these days. Like,
I couldn't agree with that.
Well, I don't know. It depends on what you watch. I think it depends on what you do on social media. It depends on all that sort of stuff. If you watch positive things, if you watch positivity-based content, you're going to see more positive content. But if all you watch is fucking like pedestrian and fucking news.com.au, you're going to see rubbish and you're going to get negativity thrown at you all the time. And you're going to respond to that the same way that you always do, which is like fear and fucking everyone else is to blame and, you know, look out for yourself and this and that.
It's true. I think, you know, that this whole thing has made people, I hope it humbles people a bit, because we do have this attitude where it's like everyone is out to get me, I'm important. But this virus kills everyone, no matter who you are, rich, poor, mostly poor, but rich, poor, mostly black, sometimes white. Like this is the thing, right? But it does kill people indiscriminately. And but I think the modern attitude is like, what can happen to me? And how can I protect me? Not how can I protect
everybody else? Yeah, that's why it's confusing people.
But also to that, like you say, you hope people will be humbled by it. But I think how we've seen by other things that have happened in the past, apart from probably 9/11, people just forget. 6 months later, they haven't remembered that things have happened. This is a big one. And it probably will. The effects of it will last for a lot longer because it has affected so many people on such a large scale. But,
I mean, I'm really proud to be in New York during this. Actually, like New York's a great place when it comes to this kind of stuff. They activated intensely as it happened, and people here know how to respond to a tragedy. So just to kind of go from where we started, like how I got into this, the pathology department just said to scientists, hey, do you want to start testing people? We have this machine from Roche, who's a Swiss company that made this big machine. We need people to load the samples. So basically the doctors will swab people. They'll shove a swab in the back of their head.
I got that.
Put it in. Yeah,
Did you?
it
I'll
hurts.
tell you about it. Yeah, I can go. You go on, Matt. I'll tell you about it later.
Yeah, I do. I have to do it to myself. And I just go into the bathroom and I don't even think about it anymore. It's kind of like bungee jumping.
Yeah, definitely. How often do you have to test yourself? How many you reckon?
I've only done it once,
Right.
and I was negative. It was, it was kind of because I would be around people subsequently that I couldn't avoid. So I thought I may as well test myself, be sure that I'm not going to be a risk to them.
Yep.
But the department said to us, okay, we're going to send in patient samples from when people come into the hospital. You'll test them. And we were getting, 1,000 a day, maybe a bit less.
Were you able to test them all?
Through all these. What's that?
Were you able to test them all in that time?
Yeah.
Like you hear that
usually we got through about.
You hear there's a
6,
shortage of tests or whatever.
They were rationing it at the start, how many we could do. But now I feel like it's caught up, depending on which population you're testing. So we were testing first people that came into the hospital with symptoms or were sick. Mm-hmm. So when you ran the test, basically you take the nasal swab, you put it into a tube, you load it into this machine, and you wait for 2 hours and it's done. The whole test is done. Because what the machine does is it takes this virus contains something called RNA. So you have DNA, and then after that you transcribe it to RNA. The RNA then becomes the protein, which does the function of that gene. RNA is what the genome of this virus is. So what this machine does is it extracts the RNA, turns it into DNA, and then it tests for whether or not there's any virus DNA around in that sample. So that's the idea. What you're doing is you're saying, does this sample have virus in it? It doesn't tell you if you're immune to the virus.
No.
It just tells you when I took this swab, do you have it?
Yeah.
So within 2 hours, you get that information. And I see it on this screen. I can see every result.
And it's automated. You don't have to force anything out to people. It's automated.
I have to release it to the doctors. So it's just one button.
Okay.
You just hit release, and then it goes to wherever it came from. But I can see it before it happens. And when we were testing people who were, sick, of course, 90% of them had coronavirus. So then what we started to do is test healthcare workers. So that's really important too. They're always exposed. You want your workforce to be healthy. All of a sudden we're seeing, maybe 50% of healthcare workers had it.
And that's where the collapse happens. And that's where the collapse happens. I heard an analogy of it's like if a nurse gets it or a doctor gets it, that's not, if you use a war analogy, that's not like you losing a soldier. That's like losing a general. Like that's like losing an actual, not just a footman. That's like an important piece of the fucking puzzle.
It really is.
And that's what happened in Italy.
Limited people.
Yeah, you don't want that one to come up pink. It comes up pink, positive. There's 2 tests it runs. And so, you see that. And now we're testing cops, firefighters, basically not the general population. But what we have here is like basically all the first responders we test all the time. And that's what my job is now. It's basically to take these samples, you go into a hood, you have live virus, you transfer it across. So you're right there with the virus. You know that some of these have it. I wouldn't say I'm like shaking and scared every time I do it. No way. It's just I've been doing this kind of stuff for years with other types of samples.
You're just conscious of it.
Well, you've got protection on as well anyway.
Yeah, we have protection. The problem there was that the masks were not coming in fast enough. So we were actually reusing our face masks.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Okay. Yeah.
They're slowly building a stockpile of masks. We can reuse them. It's not ideal, but we do it. The rest of the protection is good, and we're using hoods that protect us from exposing ourselves to aerosol from the sample. But yeah, I mean, there's always a risk. You go into this job knowing there's a risk that you're going to get it. But I didn't, to be honest, on a personal note, there was a Thursday where Governor Cuomo said, all right, New York, you're locked, you're shut down. And you have to go into your apartment and sit there. The thought of sitting down for an extended period of time for me was a disaster.
Yeah.
Marty's known me since I was a kid, and I don't think I've ever sat down.
Yeah.
I was a bit kind of all over the place. And so the idea of it was psychologically really scary to me, is just being by myself sitting there. And actually, only a month before it all happened, this is very personal, but it was like I don't mind sharing it now. About a month before it happened, I've been having all these troubles with just my behavior. I was like really going off the rails all the time, and just very distant from people and all this. And I got assessed for it, and they're like, oh, you have like traits of obsessive compulsive disorder. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense. And actually my best friend at the time took me to get ramen up the street, and it was kind of his way to just ask me about my behavior. And it was really good because I knew it was happening, but I never spoke to anyone. So I was kind of coming to grips with this diagnosis, if you will. And then coronavirus started, and they're going to tell me, all right, you're going to lose all the structure that you had in your life
And
immediately.
stay at home.
Yep.
Yep, stay at home. So I was like, fuck, what am I going to do? I get the offer to do the volunteering, and it actually worked really well for me because I had this structure now in my life where I can sign up to something, know it's coming,
And your mind's
and
active.
stimulate myself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I just don't have the ability to sit around at home and watch Tiger King.
Yeah.
Like, it's not.
No,
I just can't.
a lot of people are struggling with that. I am a bit similar in that I'm not as clever as you, but I'm also like, I can't stay. I like being home, but I can't stay home. And I got the little corona test because I came in contact with someone who had it. About 3 weeks ago, I got told by someone that I've been close with that they tested positive here in Melbourne. So me and Julia did the right thing and like isolated for 2 weeks, and I was working from home. But after like a week, after like 8 days of working from home, I was like
Starting to get loopy.
Yeah, like I was not getting depression, nothing like that. But I was like, fuck this. I can't stay here any longer.
When your mind isn't...
But I was still working.
Yeah,
it wasn't
but
that.
It's
it was
not
just
in
that,
like this regularity though.
It was just that you're just stuck.
You're
and you
aware
go
of
from
it.
the bedroom
You're
to
aware of it.
Yeah.
If you're in normal life, you don't have that awareness of you're in normal life. You just are living.
Sure.
Where if you're not in something that's normal, you're thinking about that. This is not normal right now.
Also, I'm goal orientated in that it's like, oh, I've got to go to work, damn it. But once you do your 8 hours or whatever at work, you're going to come home and you're going to fucking play the new Doom game. Whereas when I was home, I was like, I was always home. There was nothing to look forward to because I'm at the place I usually looked forward to being. You know what I'm saying?
Well, then, yeah.
It's hard to have the engine on idle, I think. And what happened to me was I used this time. We were finishing a publication, myself and this guy Igor in the lab, and we were working together to finish this paper that we'd been writing for 4 years. Then I had this grant that I have to write to get a job after this job. Then the coronavirus testing. So I created structure in my life again. And a lot of it's based around testing for coronavirus. Now I go into that lab, I can socialize with great people. There's a supervisor in there, Jin Hee, who's from South Korea. She's amazing. Just the most giving, kind person.
Because what else would you have done if you had have said no to that opportunity?
Mate, I don't even know.
Yeah.
I would have become a porn addict. I don't know.
But
it's
like
Pornhub is chilling at the
more
moment.
of a porn addict.
job wise though, because the place that you were working, is that shut down? That's the place that you're working at now, right? They've just transferred it. It's just completely changed.
Yeah, so the leukemia work goes on the back burner now.
Yeah. Which is interesting in itself, I think.
It's tough, yeah. It's like psychologically for the field. It's like we used to be there was an article in this new journal called Nature Cancer. And one of the people wrote an editorial saying, what this means for the future of cancer research. I took from it, what's that?
Sets it back.
Yeah, it does. It basically said like we were a priority research field before this. And then, as should be expected, like the field shifted to coronavirus. The journal started to publish it's like a lot of bad articles, some good one, like some really good ones on coronavirus, but very quickly. So everyone's focus shifted toward coronavirus, which is good. It has to happen. But it meant that clinical trials for cancer patients stopped. It meant that research for cancer stops, and these are experiments that can take years.
Because the other thing on that, I have a question on that. Do the papers that people normally write about these subjects wouldn't normally be done in that short amount of time, or are there papers that people knock out pretty quickly?
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot more leeway in journals now to get them out.
Yeah.
Because
which could be
potential
it's very
upside is
problematic.
high. Yeah. So there's definitely some great ones, like in Nature and Science, the journals. There's been publications where they've actually solved the protein structure of what's called the spike protein. That's the protein on the surface of the virus that interacts with its host cell to allow it to attach and enter the cell. So coronavirus has something on its surface called a spike protein, and it interacts with a protein on host cells like lung cells and maybe some white blood cells called ACE2, so ACE2. What they did, a lot of groups now have actually solved the structure of that interaction between the virus and the host cell. And that opens up a ton of possibilities for making therapeutics that hit that interaction, so inhibit it, or vaccine design. You know what is unique about coronavirus now? You can make vaccines. And that's been a huge advantage of pumping out these papers quickly. And to China's credit, when this came out and they knew this was going around, they sent the sequence of coronavirus very quickly to people. And so people could study it. Yeah. It was released. The scientists there did a great job in releasing it. So, you know, we get caught up in the politics of it.
Yeah, because
as
media.
a scientific, yeah, and it's like
media don't want to talk about the good things. They fucking
It's easy to rip people apart, but you don't celebrate the fact that the sequence was released quickly or that people are solving the structure very quickly.
Which is weird. I'm pretty sure I've said on the podcast before, I wish that the news did have more of that sort of stuff, but I know that it's not interesting to the majority of idiots in the world. They're like, fuck all this smart shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but it would be good to hear stuff like that. I mean, I'm sure there's shit that I can tune into that I choose not to as well. But anyway.
I agree. I think it's not sexy. What we do potentially isn't sexy. It's such a long game a lot of the time. So, for example, like, we've solved the structure of coronavirus. This could form the basis of a vaccine. The next question is, why don't they have a vaccine
already?
Vaccines take 18 months to make. It's not.
This is one of our sort of questions. Will there be a vaccine though?
Yeah.
There will be.
There will be a vaccine. So already there's so many companies, including University of Queensland's one of them. But there's a lot of companies in America and around the world that are using different techniques to make a vaccine. So there's some techniques where they use these protein structures that we know to design things that would form an immune response against the virus.
Because dipshits like me are hearing things like there won't ever be a vaccine.
No, I mean, the vaccines can happen. And now the platforms have opened up to get them into clinical trials quicker. That's one thing that a lot of the FDA are doing is once people have the ability to make a good candidate, they can get it into an early clinical trial faster. Now, that's not going to change the timeline over dramatically.
They still say like 18 months, and I think that seems dreaming.
And will there be a thing where it's like the flu exists forever, right? There's no cure for it. There's just like you get better if you get better, and there's things that you can help. Is that going to happen with the coronavirus?
There's some idea that it's going to be a seasonal virus potentially.
Yeah.
And like the flu, you get a flu vaccine, and every year there's a possibility that we get the coronavirus vaccine every year. So it's definitely a possibility, but right now the immediate clinical trials, and NYU itself has about 16, I think, clinical trials going right now. Is like, how do we treat the symptoms right now?
Because will it morph into something else like the flu does?
Yeah, it's possible. You see from the genetics that it does drift a bit genetically. One thing for sure is like drug-resistant strains, if they're going to emerge. So say we find a drug that inhibits the coronavirus some way. Are we going to select for a strain of the coronavirus that overcomes that drug?
Is that going to be more deadly, or is it going to be pretty tame in comparison?
Usually they're probably more deadly because the option that we use in the clinic would be ineffective.
But less people will get it because more people are taking vaccines.
Well, the vaccine would just stop it really in its tracks if it was an effective vaccine, much like smallpox,
polio,
and polio.
Yeah, but I chatted to a woman named Karen who lives in Kew, and she thinks that the polio vaccine is a bunch of fucking horseshit. So what do you think about that?
Well, everyone's got autism from it, but aside from that,
I mean that's so frustrating. Like, I'm not for banning people for do anything, but I think if you have kids and you don't vaccinate them, the kids should be taken off you. Is that fair?
They don't let kids in school if you don't vaccinate.
We've got that here too. Yeah, you're not allowed in,
which is great.
It is. I mean, that many.
I talked to someone.
I got so angry about that.
Yeah, I talked to someone who's a friend of a friend, and he was talking about someone that didn't allow their kids to have vaccines. And the guy, I met the guy. I didn't know it was him when I met him, and I was like, that guy was weird as fuck.
But I've had the chat,
and I'm like, why is he procreating? Jesus
exactly, it's not right But I've had chats with people who are like sort anti-vax essentially.
Yeah,
and I'm like, okay, but all the really smart science bitches that I know in my life, they're all like, get vaccinated.
Yeah,
like Yara, she's like, get vaccinated. Matt,
of course.
But this person did her research while on the shitter on Facebook. Correct. So who's smarter, Stu?
Yeah. And good. They make that decision once in their life, whereas everyone else keeps learning. So good on them.
The problem is with their decision affects other children.
Yes, but they also make those sorts of decisions about other things in their life, and their quality of life isn't as good. So don't worry.
You look at the leadership too. Trump said, it's like giving a vaccine's like they give a man you'd give to a horse and all this. So he's already raising the profile of these anti-vaxxers.
Yeah, I know.
When the coronavirus comes out, people will be itching for it.
The vaccine.
Because they don't want this anymore. Even the people who are not vaccinating their kids against things that they really have to for the safety of other children. I bet your bottom dollar that they're going to turn around and say, get me that coronavirus vaccine. I don't want this.
You are.
Because it's shut down.
I think you're overestimating fucking idiots.
Idiots, yeah. I agree.
I
already know people who are like, this is bullshit. This is media bullshit.
Yeah.
Sharon, how do you see through the bullshit? How are you so clever?
Yeah, I know a few
that's the
conspiracy theories.
It's like a platform. Yeah, it's like a lot of media platforms they want to be even-handed. So what they do is they give the scientific opinion for climate change, for example. They get Bill Nye on here and he says climate change is a man-made phenomenon and it has to stop or the world's going to fall apart, which is 99% of scientists agree. Then they're like, Jim from South Dakota, you live in a bunker under the ground and you think that the UN are in your backyard all the time. What do you think of climate change?
Yeah. It's fucking cold where I am, so...
and they say things like that. Well, it snowed the other day. That's not what climate change means. And I think when you try to be even-handed like that in the media, which I understand giving everyone a voice.
No, I don't.
But there's the point of everyone says it's my First Amendment right here to say these things. You do have freedom of speech here, but you're not freedom of speech without consequence. I should be able to rip the shit out of you.
But you are able to. You are able to.
But the problem is, then I'm considered a snobby scientist.
Don't worry about it.
Is a no.
Don't worry about
it. The reason why you need see, the reason why you need to worry about it is because that's where the disconnect is coming from. It's because this information and education isn't being communicated properly to idiots.
No, but don't worry about what the idiots think.
But you've got to get them on your side. Like, okay, you say that, but I'm having this chat with someone who, when idiots vote Liberal, idiots vote Liberal, idiots vote Liberal. It's like, okay, well, if they're idiots, if they're really idiots, then you as some smart person, you must be able to manipulate an idiot.
Yeah.
So that's that. You can't just write it off to idiot. It's an element of idiot.
How well they relate to people, like I feel scientists are presented like we all went to Harvard straight away and therefore we're above people.
No, but I also think that society prevails in the end, good or bad. And we are seeing, and we've talked about it before, that, prior to coronavirus, we are in the best time that we've ever been in.
Yeah.
And we will continue to be so because society always prevails and history shows that that society learns from bad things. And
I hope so.
Hopefully.
Well, it does.
Yeah.
It sort of does, but it sort of doesn't. No, I'm sure there's a billion proverbs of this in the Bible and all over religious things about
before the internet.
Yeah, no, I'm just in general. I'm saying it's like Matt, listen to me. Have I ever told you the story about the grasshopper and the octopus?
Here we go. Yeah.
All winter, the grasshopper was collecting acorns. All summer, the grasshopper was collecting acorns for the winter.
You've been watching something that I watched recently as well.
Which grasshoppers notoriously eat is acorns.
Yes, and it was gathering it all for the winter, while the octopus was just mooching off his girlfriend and playing video games all day. And then winter came.
It's lazy mouse.
The grasshopper died, and the octopus ate all his acorns.
Acorns.
So the lesson
he ate all the wrappers.
Wait for people to do work.
Yeah, no, that's a joke from Futurama. But my point is that no, people forget. They do. Look, you touched on it before. It's like, this coronavirus is really bad, but in 2 years' time it won't be. So fuck it. Get rid of all the pandemic.
Yeah, but that's two different things that I'm talking about. One is that people forget about how sensitive we are right now about coronavirus, that they will forget that once we've solved it, and they will forget that this was such a weird time. Maybe less so because this is such a different thing, but everything else, you see, if not to say anything bad about people that help people in the bushfires and stuff like that, but we're not talking about that now because of this. But even if this didn't happen, we probably wouldn't be talking about bushfires right now.
The only reason why you're kind of wrong a little bit is because in the news that the Bushfire Royal Commission is happening right now, and that is in the news. I do get your point.
You know what I mean? Society, though.
Yeah.
That's a commission.
Yeah.
Society does latch on to the here and now. I mean, I think, though, a lot of it, America's a great example. Donald Trump is the first impeached president in a while. He had led the longest government shutdown in American history for nothing. He was investigated for ties with Russia. He's done so many bad things, and we've all forgotten right now because we're putting him under the microscope for the idiotic things that he's saying right now. You forget about the past. Scott Morrison, on the other hand, has gone the other way. He responded poorly to bushfires, and a lot of people lost a lot of things, and he went to Hawaii. And then what happens is, I actually met Scott Morrison too, by the way. That's another story in itself. And it was scary. And then what happened was, but now coronavirus has hit, and he's actually watched the rest of the world, and Australia doesn't have many cases.
Yeah.
So Scott Morrison now is looking like a bloody legend.
Well, him and his group.
Are Americans looking at Australia and thinking they're doing a good job?
Americans are looking at America and thinking about America.
Yeah, you're right.
I
apologize.
What I was going to say there is the group dynamic of Parliament in Australia is different to America, though. The president has a lot more status than the prime minister does.
And that's the shame of it. It's sort of interesting to look throughout history at leadership and how it in crises. So, for example, World War II is a great example. Neville Chamberlain in England was saying, this Hitler guy's all right, and actually signed a peace deal between the United Kingdom and Germany.
Yeah, that lasted a while.
In the late 30s. And then all of a sudden, Germany expanded to Czechoslovakia and then Poland, and they declare war at that point. So they trusted them too much. And you bring in a different type of leader, Churchill, who is historically questionable, but at that point in time, he's the perfect leader. Yeah. He's aggressive. He doesn't accept the lies from Germany, and he responds really well.
Because Churchill sorry, mate, talk about FDR in a second, but yeah, with Churchill, he was the perfect person for England in World War II, and he was a hero. And then he was kicked out of Parliament. He was kicked out 3 years after.
He's a rough bloke. Like in terms of just in peacetime, he's not the guy you want.
Correct.
But in wartime, FDR, on the other hand, in the late 30s, early 40s, he's going for re-election, and he runs on the fact that your kids aren't going to go to war. We're not going to engage in this war in Europe. Pearl Harbor happens. He has to galvanize the country, but it was a political move not to go to war. Trump is a classic politician. He doesn't care about people. He cares about being re-elected. He cares about all these things, and the result of that is that he didn't respond well to a crisis. He was too busy worrying about the politics of it, trying to make it out like the Democrats were using this coronavirus to bring him down, and then not building hospitals, not building ventilators, all these things. And what we really needed now was someone who put that aside and just said, okay, this thing could be coming.
Yeah, forget
We
politics
shut down
for now.
travel.
But that will never
I'm
happen.
dreaming.
Yeah, that'll never happen in America.
Even if a Democrat was in, there would be some pushback to that kind of action, but it would have
the Democrat
slightly less.
Yeah, sorry. Without getting too political, the Democrats are not heroic in this at all. They're just as bad. There's footage of Pelosi and there's footage of Cuomo in February saying, all good, all good, all good. Pelosi was in Chinatown at the end of February saying, nah, we're sweet. Everything's good here.
They get it handed down from there.
They're the bosses.
I don't know.
Well, what I think there is like they started to bring in, I mean, I don't know a lot of those stories that well. I hear Trump talking about them, especially the Pelosi Chinatown one, but he has a tendency to overblow what they're saying. What I think would happen though is like with the leaders that are seasoned politicians, like, say, for example, a Bernie Sanders or a Joe Biden or someone like this, they'd probably be more inclined to actually listen to scientists that were saying, well, this thing's coming and it could be very bad.
I think Sanders, I would disagree with Biden because America...
Actually, Biden was part of the SARS response, and that didn't kill a lot of people. And a lot of that was down to how they responded to SARS, which was a coronavirus.
Yeah.
So they did well with SARS.
With the current Biden then, Trump in like the elections in November, if it happens, Trump's going to win in a landslide, in an absolute landslide.
I think the way that he loses is if they allow mail-in voting. So you can mail stuff in.
Maybe.
Because the way that the electoral system is built here is that you vote in a weekday when most minorities have to work.
Yeah, most minorities.
You can't just take work.
Most friggin', working class people. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think and Biden gets that vote. He gets that vote because he's got Barack Obama there, who is the hero of the Democratic Party. Yeah. And but I mean, back to Corona though.
We'll move on because we'll get stuck on that because
I go silent when it gets too much fucking politics.
We'll move on that because we'll get stuck. Because
I know you had questions actually. So,
yeah. All right. First question.
You want to rip them up?
Okay.
Yeah.
First question comes from a really panicked person. Really panicked. His name's Peter. You might know him. You're related to him. He's your brother.
He's my brother.
Yes. He had a really important question that he wanted answered immediately. Do you know where the remote is?
Oh, God.
Remember that episode of Simpsons? Bart, do you remember where the remote is? Did you check your pocket? It's in my pocket. All right, next question.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah. Next question comes from someone on Twitter. They asked...
Bassy?
Yeah, this is a fucking dumb question. Do you guys still drink Coronas on Friday nights after testing Corona?
Everyone's an alcoholic now. I know that.
Yeah.
I wonder what's Corona sales.
Well, when it first happened, when it first happened, their shares, they lost like 1.25 million in sales in like a week.
There was a picture I saw.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, there was a picture I saw of empty pallet of beer, empty pallet.
Actually, that's not much.
And then
1.2 might have been billion.
Anyway,
might have been a lot.
And then the Corona beers were still all there.
Yeah.
Like, fuck, people are
Yeah,
fucking
yeah,
idiots.
yeah.
All right.
They got a rebadge after this.
Yeah, they do.
got a rebadge.
What would they call it? What would they call it? Just
Fucking sex in a boat because it's fucking near water.
The most delicious beer ever.
that's a good joke, man.
That's shit.
Okay.
Thanks.
A couple of these we've already touched on, but this one's, what do you think, like, what do you say / think when people say, oh, it's just like the flu?
I mean, there was a time where that was like I think, defense mechanism of a lot of us at the very start. We're like, this will become a seasonal thing, and the mortality rate looks high because it's who's reported. Right now, there's no excuse to say it's like the flu.
Because it's nothing like the flu, or it's sort of like the flu?
If you hear about what people go through during and we're not talking about 70-year-olds, we're talking about 30-year-olds.
Like feeling like they're drowning or whatever.
It is a nightmare. It is, it sounds just terrible. There's a piece I read in the New York Times yesterday, and it was talking to nurses. So like, people are just drowning to death, essentially, and they're feverish and delirium and all these things beyond your standard flu. And another problem is the dead. So you can't, when you're about to die, usually you're allowed to have your family around you.
Yeah, you're on your own.
It's like a human labor. Now you're on your own, and these nurses and doctors in New York are basically having a moment of silence when the death happens around the body, and then they just have to keep working. And so, like, on another point, there's 2 points I want to make here about New York. It's like the amount of trauma that this will cause people who are first responders. People talk about heroes, right? And they throw that term around a lot. Like, I think it's really relevant to the doctors and the nurses because they have to watch so many people die. Now, that is like a wartime. That's a war.
Well, I've seen that footage of the, I think it was the Chinese doctor, and he was like working on them, and he was like losing his marbles, like just out of pure like frustration of not being able to help and just seeing so many people die. It was full on to watch. Like
it is, and it's like you're helpless to it because the treatments aren't quite there yet, and you're just keeping people. You're just trying to get them through it. Every night at 7 p.m. I don't know if you saw this video, but outside my building where I live, firefighters will just line up and start clapping our building because the emergency room is right underneath where I live, and it's really important that these people are recognized because so that's when people say it's like the flu. You tell a doctor that has to deal with 200 people dying a day in their ER that it's like the flu. And we'll see what you think then. But everyone's allowed to make that call. It's frustrating. I think another thing I want to bring up is the Army in America. So they're really good when it comes to this stuff, the engineers in the military and deploying. And I live on 1st Avenue and 30th Street. That's where the hospital, NYU Langone, is. And they shut off a street. They put up this big green wall on one of the streets. And behind it is just refrigerator trucks of bodies. Like, you know it. Like, they're just there. And there's military guys there. And it's like, it's unbelievable. Like, you don't think about mass body trucks.
This day and age, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't remember a flu doing that.
Correct.
To be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Spanish flu maybe, but I wasn't around in 1918.
No, but I was saying this to people early on. I was saying it to people early February when they were saying it's just like the flu. And I remember saying back then that, okay, let's say you're right and it's just like the flu. We're still going to have the flu though. Like, this is on top of that. You know, so
yes.
if hospitals are struggling now, it's like you're going to double the problem with another flu, if you want to say it's like the flu. So it's still something to fucking worry about.
That's people's way of dealing with it and trying to...
What's the word?
Comprehend something that they can't.
Compartmentalize.
Yeah. That just means to separate things.
But I mean, just put it in a box. It's the flu. There's the box.
Protect yourself from it by
but they don't
these things,
understand
and it's
what
like,
they're saying.
You know, but I remember there was a time where I was lining up to see this music show with my best mate Sam and my best mate Tony. The three of us all hang out, and they're both microbiologists, and I'm the only one that's not smart enough to be a microbiologist because they're crazy smart. And we're standing there, and Sam was pretty distressed by it, I remember. And I remember I was more dismissive of it in that time. This is probably late January. I was fairly dismissive of Sam, saying like, but I wasn't saying that it was the disease wasn't important. I was just saying there's only so much we can do, i.e. wash your hands, do all the things that you're told to do, but there's no point in panicking about it because we can only do what we can do. However, I would admit that amongst his genuine concern for it, I probably wasn't empathetic enough to him at that point in time. We all have our way to deal with it. Now, I never say that it's not I would never go around saying, oh, this thing is just some hoax or all this. But at the same time, my attitude generally toward it is like, personally, I can wash my hands, I can wear a mask, I can test people. What else can I do?
And that was what I was going to say is like, if you are doing your bit, then there's apart from being empathetic towards your friend, that's fine. But you're okay because you deal with it differently than he does. So there's no reason for you to be frustrated with yourself or anything like that either, because you've dealt with it that way as well. So everyone deals with it differently. As long as you are doing your bit and not, intentionally hanging out with like 10 people on a Friday night because it's the end of the week or whatever, what else can you do? Like what I would agree with you.
Yeah. And when I got the idea to sign up, it was kind of like, in a way, it reminded me of when we were at school, we'd always learn about, did you read Soldier Boy? Did you have to read that?
No.
When you were at school?
That, no.
It's a World War I. It's a Gallipoli-based book. And it reminded me, and you always hear these stories like, oh, all the kids in Australia wanted to go on an adventure.
Yeah.
And they didn't realize they were going to get over to Turkey and have to shoot a bunch of people.
Or be dead immediately,
and, Yeah, and I felt more like that. I was like, the testing is kind of like, I'm going to jump in on this interesting time. It's like a bit of an adventure, like people are going to be. And I didn't think about it as like, oh shit, like there's a virus everywhere and I could get it. And I still don't. I know the risk. I take all the precautions. But for me, it's just a way to keep stimulated and use a skill that I've obtained over time.
You are helping.
And also I was thinking when you're 50 and I'm 54, I think I'm about 4 years older than you, you'll be like, oh yeah, I was in New York when this pandemic was happening. Like, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting, yeah. I mean...
Like, I was there. Oh, were you? Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, it's as terrible as it is, like you're a part of history in a way.
Yeah.
Like in terms of you watching it unfold. But yeah, I mean, psychologically for the city, it's been interesting. I wonder how people are going to come out of it. I hope, like every time we're testing, so I have a friend, Latia, and she's like really funny, very like she's just always bubbly and great to work next to because we're just aliquoting stuff from one tube to another. And
don't know what that word is.
But aliquot means like just transferring a volume of a liquid from one place to another.
Yep.
And so Latia and I and Jinhee, who's supervising, we'll just talk about like what we're going to do that night, like what we're going to eat, or we just talk about life. things, and then like having a huge party after it's all done.
Oh yeah.
All we ever talk about
The
is
first
like how
beer,
smashed we're gonna get.
the first beer at somewhere outside of your home is going to be the best beer you've ever had.
I know, but I had this fight.
I knew you would have a problem with
I had this fight with Husey because Husey's like, oh man, in 2021 we're gonna fucking hang out all the time, have parties all the time. I go, cunt.
No, you're not.
In 2021 you're gonna be playing League of Legends
correct.
like you've done every day of your life for the last 10 years.
I thought the way that you were going to react to that is I don't hang out with people now that I don't want to hang out with. Why would I want to do it then?
Nah, I am looking forward to karaoke. I cannot wait to sing karaoke.
Yeah.
Oi, Matt, remember when me and you sang Space Oddity? Do you remember that? I remember
it was so good.
I remember
That was so good.
People clapped us. People were like, fucking well done. We're like, yeah, what can you do?
How drunk were
Yeah.
you?
Not even, I remember it.
Okay.
We were sober as judges.
We killed it.
We were doing it just out of the passion for the song.
Exactly.
Out of the kindness of your heart to the public.
All right,
Viewing.
couple of I mean, I've got 100 other questions. So,
How long have you got?
You want to rapid fire? As long
yeah,
as you want, mate. I'm good.
yeah. No, we're good. We're good too. Well, this one, I mean, most of them we've already touched on, but
Cool.
No, I'm just trying to make sure I read it right. The whole thing about does it only affect old people? Is that something
Wrong.
that? Yeah. So
Maybe expand on that then.
no. It's like you sort of get told that young people have nothing to worry about. Is that generally the
But
case?
I don't think that anyone's ever said that.
No.
Who said
think
that?
there
That's what the public
there was a
fucking
time-
correlates.
Yeah, so most of the mortality, it's in people 50 and above. So like over 90% of the deaths.
And that
would
have
be in
prior
50 and
conditions.
above. Yep. Because
Like
aging
heart
your lungs,
issues, lung issues.
yeah, you smoked your whole life, you had diabetes, you have immunosuppressants.
So you,
but
for example,
young
like
people-
if you got coronavirus, like you personally, you're not worried about dying from coronavirus.
No, I'm personally not, but that's my own. Like, I think for me personally, I'm the best person to be testing this because I live by myself. I live in the hospital where the testing happens, and I'm not in constant interaction with people. Those criteria make me the ideal person to do this because I'm young. I'm young and healthy.
No kids yet and stuff.
No kids. Like, I'm not bringing it home to people. I don't have to travel a long way to do it, the testing, but it does affect young people. And if you hear the way that young people who are very sick feel, it's like getting hit by a truck.
That's the other thing I wanted to say. I heard this little thing, you tell me if it's sort of wrong, is that when someone gets the flu and they get put on a ventilator, they probably end up surviving. Whereas this, if you've got coronavirus and you get put on a ventilator, you're probably going to die.
Yeah, the ventilator is like they're saying that Cuomo said that 20% of people that go off, successfully get off a ventilator.
So 80% people on ventilators die.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas with the flu, that's not the case, I think.
I'm not sure about the flu. I can't really comment on that, but I know that the ventilator is like a last resort. You're just trying to get as much oxygen in the lung as you can at that point. But, the air sacs in your lung can be so scarred, or there can be so much inflammation in the lung at that point that you're kind of flogging a dead horse in a way. It's like you're just trying to keep them alive. But yeah, at that point, a lot of people are not
the inevitable.
Yeah. But there's a new treatment actually that people are using too, trialing, which is one of many, but it's this plasma infusion treatment. So have you heard of this?
Star Wars?
So I don't know why I said, have you heard of this? Like I was like, Jay Leno.
Have you heard of this?
Have you seen this?
What's that from?
Jimmy, South Park.
Have you seen this? Have you heard of this?
Yeah. Wow, what a great audience. So what happened was if someone has coronavirus, recovers, they're recruiting people now to donate blood because their blood has antibodies that can neutralize coronavirus, theoretically. What they do is they take...
The antibodies is from having it coronavirus once before?
Yeah, so your immune system recognized coronavirus, it killed it, it cleared the coronavirus, and then it formed a pool of what are called B cells. And B cells make antibodies. So it had a pool of B cells that now produce antibodies specifically targeting coronavirus. So that in theory, the next time you get coronavirus, you have antibodies circulating in your body that are trained to recognize this hit when it happens, and then you mount an immune response quicker. Because before that, when you've never seen the virus,
Yeah,
you don't have this recognition. You've not been
doesn't your
trained.
body tell? Doesn't the cells in your body tell it to fight it in allowing it first and then fighting it? Is that right?
Yeah.
Or
So
it
what
attaches
happens
to
is
its cells or something like that?
Yeah, it's a form of selection. So what it means is you have the cells in your body recognize a whole bunch of random sequences that aren't your own tissue, and they've never seen this thing before. So they're generated to basically recognize a bunch of random stuff. Then when you have a bacteria or virus invade your body, there's a selection process where that thing is causing damage in your lungs or whatever, and immune cells come in, and then they're basically all having a shot at seeing if they can recognize this thing. And eventually, well, it actually happens in other organs, but eventually a cell that can recognize it will be selected for. It grows, expands, and then it clears the infection.
So that's sort of what comes... Sorry, mate. So that's what sort of comes to one of the questions here about, can you get it twice?
You can get it twice, but if your immunity is good, so you've trained... Yeah, it's like if you've got a trained immunity toward it and you get it a second time, the theory is that you'll clear it quicker because you've already encountered this insult before, so you know what to do now. Your immune system has been primed for that.
Yeah, the cells are recognized.
And actually in Melbourne, the Nobel Prize for that theory came out of Melbourne from McFarlane Burnett. So cheers, Melbourne.
Yeah,
that's
pretty. Yeah. We're pretty bloody good, mate. We're pretty bloody good.
Fuck this New York shit.
Yeah. So that's sort of, if there was to be a vaccination, that's sort of where it would come from.
Yeah, so the vaccine would be designed around getting an immune response that is enduring for your life. So it trains your body without causing all the symptoms of coronavirus. It allows your body to recognize parts of the virus for future infections.
Yeah.
But reinfection, they don't really know just how well the immunity from the first infection.
They've said that some people have had it twice, haven't they?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's actually a false positive the first time.
Oh, yeah.
So the test said positive when it wasn't.
So inconclusive.
Just for whatever reason. Yeah, and then they actually get it for the first time.
Right.
And
because how can you get something that? Can you, with any sickness, can you get something that quick twice in such a short time? Or?
You can, yeah. Like, say, you're in a community where it's always around, and it just happens to be that you hit it twice.
Right.
It just happens. I don't know. We're not at a point now where we can say, the immune response that's been trained the first time is very effective the second time. But yeah, the vaccine is designed around that theory of training your immune system for future encounters with that.
Okay.
That particular insult.
A very important question coming up. Did 5G do this?
I don't get this.
Yeah.
What was this theory?
Because
what does that mean?
The mobiles.
People say it.
Have you seen the movie fucking... What is that movie where it's like the British thing? It's like a James Bond ripoff, and Samuel L. Jackson's the bad guy, and he puts the virus into people's SIM cards that he's got everyone to buy. And they answer the phone and they get the virus through their head.
I haven't seen that. This is because
I'm going to look up what the film's called.
Mobile phone coverage is changing from 4G to 5G. And so a lot of geniuses are saying that the coronavirus is because we're using 5G now. No comment on that
Why
one, Matt?
can't you just fucking cough on someone in an airport? That's way quicker than having to put up towers that spray people with virus.
And it's such a bad theory because there's countries that have got coronavirus that haven't got 5G yet.
So dumb.
Actually, that's a crazy one too. Like countries reporting. So where my mum's from, Myanmar or Burma, they didn't report any cases initially because the government don't want to look bad there.
Well, what about North Korea? North Korea have no cases.
I mean, that's true. And we'll all bow down to our soon-to-be leader.
Yes. I found the movie. It's called Kingsman.
Guess a lot.
Kingsman. Okay, yeah. I heard that's good.
It's enjoyable. Entertaining.
See, that's the
but
problem.
He's the worst bad guy. Anyway,
that's the problem that I've got with China. Like, you look at the World Health Organization will tell you the current rate of infections and rates of death. China are like, no, we've got none now. It's like, how the hell is that believable?
The reporting, I actually think, definitely Wuhan did a great job at isolation, and they have a bit more of an extreme. Some cases there were reports of like the government welding doors shut so that infected people wouldn't come outside.
I did see footage of them shooting people too.
I haven't seen that. I hope that's not happening. But I think my major worry about this whole thing with the China rhetoric is, they've been in a trade war, the US with China, for a while now. And so the anti-China sentiment is high because of, people, they took our jobs kind of mentality. And
you said it wrong, by the way.
And then so there's a real anti-China sentiment in the world, in the US anyway, I think. And I think that's really dangerous as a society to be able to put, basically people can actively discriminate without actually knowing
ignore facts.
Yeah, and ignore the fact that they're firstly Americans and all they're just human beings.
Yeah.
And
it's a virus.
I know.
It's it's a virus. It's not like
we can't lose humanity because of politicians' trade war.
Correct. And I am absolutely. If you're going after a Chinese Australian or Chinese American, then you're a fucking retard. And I'm happy to say that word in that case. But the Chinese government has plenty to answer for as a result of this. They've failed. The information they got out failed. And I'm happy
let's let an investigation tell us that. The thing that we can't do is say all people of Asian descent are a hazard. And
dumb.
I see, like, if I'm talking about the testing facility, Jin Hee is from South Korea.
I know. All your scientists are Chinese, for God's sake. What are you going to do?
If you knocked Asian Americans out of science, Jesus.
Yeah, I know.
We're screwed.
I had that chat once with a lady who was saying, Australia needs to, we need to close the border, no more immigrants. I'm like, if we don't let immigrants in, who are going to be our doctors?
Do you know the funniest thing with that is, growing up, Diamond Creek, was an interesting place to grow up because mum was Asian. And what would happen is sometimes some of the mums would gather and talk about things. And one conversation that would happen was Asians are taking our jobs when my mum was there.
Which job am I taking today?
Yeah. So I'm always very sensitive to that because I would watch people talk to my mum about how Asians were wrecking Australia. When she's from Asia, but they didn't know that Burma was in Asia.
Yeah.
And they didn't even know what fucking Burma was half the time. But the saddest thing is my mum, I feel, was so used to it that she would just kind of have to sit there and listen to this nonsense. And Marty, my mum, she's a great lady. It's like,
definitely,
that sucks that she has to go through that. And
she's not alone as well. That would be happening all over. I'm a white person, so I have no, I'm probably on the wrong side of the fence in terms of
You're not the wrong
my
side of the
background.
fence.
I wouldn't.
You're allowed to have thoughts.
No. I mean, society-wise, in terms of my appearance and descent, you know. But what I'm trying to say is like that those conversations would be happening nonstop, like all the time. There'd be those sorts of conversations.
The issue that I've got is, I guess, because I don't associate with those circles at all.
Yeah,
I don't see it. That's my only. That's a problem, but that's because
it's not a problem.
I've insulated myself where
That's good.
I've pretty much avoid most spastics.
Well, that's what.
Yeah, I must say, like, I think growing up where I did like parts of Diamond Creek a lot. Like, it's such a beautiful town and stuff, but there were things that I remember being like really confused by as a kid when it came to like race. Just because it's like when you're a mixed race kid, sometimes it's also difficult to understand what you are like as a like racial group. You're not because like I look like a tanned white guy, but then everyone around me is telling me that Asians are bad and I'm Asian.
That's mental.
And I'm born in England, so then everyone's telling me that the Poms are the worst. I'm born there. And then, you know, it's...
At the end of the day, they're just words that actually don't mean anything until you put weight behind it. Yep. So if people are acting on those words, like the words are ignorant, right? At the base level, they're ignorance. At the worst level, it's like full-on racism. But like, you know, they're at the end of the day, they're just words that can cause other things.
Yeah.
But if, you know,
you know
what I mean?
Yeah, I do. But
people use these things as a way to like push their agenda, like anti
and sometimes to relate to other people.
I think Stu's more on the money there than pushing agenda. I think generally the ladies who were saying this about Asians, that about Asians, it's just because they wanted to fit into the circle.
Yeah.
This is what's happening.
Or they want to seem like they're important in some way, and they belittle another group of people to feel important.
Yeah. Yep. And some people like to see what they can get away with in terms of saying risque stuff as well.
I do that to some extent, but
in a comedy way. They do it in like a let's see what we can fucking do here. I hate those people.
Some of Marty's flat Earth bits are just fantastic, but he also stands by that.
I mean, we're getting off topic, but I enjoyed Diamond Creek as being one of 4 Italians in Diamond Creek.
Yeah, I was going to say, you
had to embrace it.
Yeah, but I didn't mind it. My only issue, I don't mind when people say ignorant things. It doesn't really bother me. My problem is these days I'm getting called a racist by white people who were calling me a wog growing up.
Yeah.
Now they're calling me a racist. Yeah. You called me a wog every day of my life, and now I'm a racist because I'm making a dumb joke about something or other. But that's what kills me.
What stands out to me about that sentence is that you understood that the words are just words.
Yeah, I could always feel when it was coming from a mucking around place, and when I've pulled up people,
and there's a hypersensitivity.
I've had plenty of people. I've had heaps of times where someone's called me a wog, and I go, "You are not my friend. You don't get to call."
But how hard must these people's lives be that get sensitive and offended every time someone says a word that they don't like?
But that's what I'm saying.
How hard would that life be?
But that's what I'm saying about. That's what I'm saying about. Generally, it's the people who are hypersensitive to throw around the word racist
wrong in their life.
No, it's because they've never experienced racism themselves. They've never had that wall built. So
their
life's too perfect.
Was that, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, they are offended on behalf of people.
That's a killer.
But the thing is like, you can patronize people for always looking to them as like, oh, they're a victim, I have to stand up for them. You're patronizing them sometimes.
Yeah.
It's basically what you're saying is, well, they don't have the capacity to defend themselves, so I have to be here.
Me, the smarter person, has to do it for them.
Yeah, I'm the savior. It happens a lot in the world, and the intentions are good, but the delivery is poor. And
I'll say the intentions are good most of the time.
Most of the time, yeah. A lot of it's self-serving.
Look like you're a legend, and it's like that's annoying.
Yeah.
But like we can keep going on Corona stuff. We could get into race relations.
I know. We could go on for another 7 hours. Right? Well, I'll touch on a couple other questions. Okay, so you've sort of touched on this one, but this is a vague one, which you've already touched on. But the question sort of was, what's happening in New York? So I guess
you like what it's like.
Yeah, so you can touch on that. You and the Carrie Bickmores and the Sex and the City girls, you aren't catching up for
Carrie Bickmore.
what's her name? Isn't it
Isn't
Carrie?
she right?
Carrie Bickmore's on the project.
What's the girl's name from Sex and the City? Carrie
Bradshaw?
Carrie
Bradshaw. So you and Carrie Bradshaw and the ugly redhead lady and the hot brunette lady, you guys are all hanging out still?
And Carrie Bickmore's there for some
Carrie
reason.
Bickmore's nowhere. She's on a project.
We're just having our Zoom quarantines. The
Holy shit.
mainly what I do day to day is pretty like we're not allowed to go outside except you can go for the odd walk. People keep away from each other and they're all wearing masks, so it's quite dystopian. You know, it's pretty amazing actually to watch that. Just seeing everyone in a mask, like. I think because I'm by myself, you watch couples who are allowed to like just hold hands or something.
Yeah.
You're like, fuck, I remember when I used to hit on girls. It's like
How can you hit on a girl with a mask on? It seems very.
I love your mask.
Yeah.
Where'd you get that one
It's
from?
like you miss like going on dates. You miss just like hanging out with your friends, but like physically hang out. So I kind of get that. My best friend Tony, she's like probably one of the better testers in the facility, and I see her in that testing facility, and we speak on like Zoom and all these things. You can go to the grocery store. For example, I'm Povo, so I go to Trader Joe's, and Trader Joe's only allow about 40% of people the capacity into the store. So you have lines going around the block where everyone is separated by 6 feet waiting to get in. But once you get in, you're cruising. Like it's so quick. Food is not short here. There was a time where there was a time where it wasn't there. Now that there's been an industry shift, the only reason for that was before coronavirus, a lot of the toilet paper industry would have a section for the general groceries and then a section for workplaces. And the demand on workplaces was far higher because people spend more of their life at work.
Yeah.
So they would send all out there. Now it was hard for them to restructure or redirect toilet paper now to households because now everyone's in their house. So you have this shortage, but the stockpile is there. It's just being sent to the wrong place. So they had to redirect it. Now we're at a good toilet paper range.
Do we have toilet? I haven't been to the shops.
Yeah, we got it.
I haven't been to the shops in a
There's
while.
a limit, and there's
Because we had no toilet paper for a
a
while.
lot less. But
there was a lot of dogs out there that were like taking about 50 rolls.
That's
And I'm
mental.
like, and how much Mexican food are you eating?
That's what I was saying
Like,
to people. I was like, you need to eat. If you're shitting that fucking much, change your diet, you fat idiot.
I don't get it because what were they were they thinking that the shops weren't going to close? There was no word of shops closing.
There wasn't, but also, and this is not nice, but we also have running water. So it's like, let's say you had no toilet paper. Just jump in the shower. Like,
People in India are like, we're sweet.
yeah, just jump in the shower. Like,
yeah, I just run to the river and
Is that
just
ignorant of
wash
me to
my
say
body
that?
off.
exactly. Just jump in the river and then drink the water. Okay, a couple of other ones, well, a lot of other ones. These ones.
Hang on. I had a thought because we were talking before this, and here it's interesting. I have two things. It's interesting when I'm finding that people are too overly polite, like awkward polite. Like I'm walking down the street. I mean, I'm going to the shops, right? And you're about to enter when someone's exiting, and they're like, "Oh, stand back! Oh, you go first." And I'm like, "You would never have done." And one, I'm not going to catch it from you from walking past you, and two, you would have never done that before. I guess it's good that you're doing it now, but it feels weird.
It feels weird. I think it's kind of cool though. Like people are so much more mindful of everyone around them. I like that.
Yeah.
I think that our level of there is an increased level of respect for people around you now.
Yeah.
Which
Which will disappear 2 months after
and this
it stops.
And this is also.
But I think you're right.
This is also maybe because I'm on my little insular bubble as well. But when the few times I've been to the grocery store, the people around me, in front of me and behind me, have been so nice to the checkout boys and girls.
Yeah.
Which is great.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And they've always been like, oh, thank you so much. Keep up the good work. Thank you. You're so good. And I'm like, good on you.
Do you know why? It's
idiots.
because they're in front of so many people.
Nah, but they don't do that. They've been to the shops plenty of times and been in front of people. I think the majority of people I've seen
But people are more mindful that they are in front of people.
Maybe.
Yes.
But I have not seen more appreciation for checkout chicks / boys than I have now, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Which it makes me happy to see.
The other point is family stuff is weird, right? Like, so obviously Easter's just gone. You would have normally gone around to someone's house for Easter celebrations. It was my brother's birthday yesterday. I went before I went to give him a card just to give it to him and, say happy birthday. And I couldn't greet him normally.
Or even play with his kids and that.
Correct. I just had to stand from afar and I was only there for 5 minutes. But it's like, it's just so strange. It's just such a weird fucking thing. It's so weird. Like it doesn't feel...
I'm kind of in this spot where I live here, so I don't get to see my family frequently anyway, but it is, weird to think about. Stevie got back. So Stevie, my younger brother, was stuck in Colombia when it broke out and basically had to work a way to get back before all the travel restrictions.
Same as Pete. So Pete was in Canada.
Pete was in Canada. Yeah.
Same as my boss. And was in Canada too.
I remember having conversations with both of them. Pete was more calm about it. He was very much like, we'll leave and we'll go to Canberra with his girlfriend's family. So Pete's in Canberra. And quarantined there. But then Stevie was kind of in a hostel stuck in Colombia and was like, what am I going to do? Like, there was a lot of panic. At one point, this is crazy. He was saying, me and this bloke in the hostel are thinking, like, if they won't let us on planes, we're just going to break the law and get deported back to Australia. And I was like, don't be a fucking idiot.
We're just going to steal a plane. I'm sure flying one's not that hard.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, but Stevie did get back, which was great, and quarantined.
Back in
But
Tassie.
some of the ways that he was going to get out was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it was panicking time. Like, I don't blame him. I would have been terrified to be stuck in some weird hostel.
Especially there. Like, if you were in America or Canada or UK or even Europe, you'd be like, oh, I'll get out of here. But, yeah, if you're in Colombia, it's like, fuck, do I have to
He doesn't speak the language.
He doesn't sell cocaine. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, he does that. But, like, I think but that's a family business.
Yes.
Like, we've always done that.
I do his tax, Matt. I see all of the all right. What else we got? So, one we touched on. I don't subscribe to this. Trump he's a coward and he's a leader who doesn't want to take responsibility, which is mental. But I don't see this his fault in any way. Do you?
I see his response as his fault. I think
it's a flaw.
I think he's like, the fact that the virus exists is obviously not his fault. The thing that is his fault is you have to, if you're the leader of a country that has the most cases and the most deaths in the world, you have to accept some responsibility for that.
Something has gone wrong.
Yeah. So what he does now is he has this playbook press conference that he conducts where he says, I was the first person to ban Chinese people from coming to America in January. Then in March, I enforced some of the hardest sanctions and increased testing and all this.
You skipped all the middle bit.
Yeah. What he doesn't say in this is, in February, he was telling his rallies that the Democrats were using this hoax to bring him down, which is insane. He said it was the flu multiple times. He also
the China
didn't
virus.
He was like, he said things like China virus, you're right. Like, he said that. Then he started to add specifics to it when he found out that, yes, I'm being a racist asshole, but he started saying, oh, Wuhan virus, like it's like he's fucking the WHO all of a sudden.
That gets to the political thing because, okay, China virus, I get isn't correct for him to say, but then China was saying, oh, this came in because American soldiers were in Wuhan. No. It's like, hold on. You're both mental and you're both playing shit games.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
no one wants to hear that.
Their propaganda is through the roof. Everyone's. But what happened with Trump is in the February after he knew that this was happening. So in January, like New York Times just published this great article going through a timeline of when he was told and what he did. And he actually was told so many times, you have to act now, you have to. And he didn't. So, for example, like stockpiling masks, like building up an infrastructure that could support a pandemic. He had so much time to do that. Even the government here can force private companies to start producing for something like this. And for example, like Bauer, who make ice hockey protective equipment, Bauer now make face masks.
Yeah.
And
I've seen a band that I like have turned their merch that can be used into masks and stuff like that.
Yep.
So that's
and
really
Tesla, I think Tesla do that. They're making masks as well.
Yeah, but the government can force companies to do that, and he didn't enact that quickly. He downplayed a lot of people's concerns, and I think he always said, "I was just trying to keep people comfortable." But a real leader doesn't, in a crisis, doesn't do that.
No.
When Pearl Harbor happened, FDR wasn't like, "Oh yeah, no, there was like a huge wave in Hawaii. No one knew what happened."
The Democrats did it.
Yeah, and it's like, he just said, "Get ready, we're about to rock." Like it's
a mixture of both. It's a mixture of not panicking the population because you can't have
Well,
that.
it's how you deliver the message, right? It's like, here's the information, but here's how you can stay safe and calm.
Because I've had that discussion.
People love Fauci. That's why they love Tony Fauci, who's the leader of the CDC here, who is the guy from the heavy Brooklyn accent guy that gets up and talks about coronavirus.
It's the bloody Italians, mate. The fucking Italians are killing it. Cuomo, Fauci, fucking Italians. That's what we need. More Italians.
That's what you need. But Fauci gets up there and he's just like laying out the facts all the time. Then people start to politicize him, and all of a sudden he goes from the most loved guy in America to people start to question a scientist.
Yeah.
Because he has to get the message across, he has to be at these briefings, or else Trump's going to get up there and say wild shit about chloroquine. He's going to say all this crazy shit.
That was that was one of the questions about the remedies, chloroquine or whatever. Or are they?
Yeah, they're trialing it. I mean, I don't know why. Like, time will tell why he's so adamant that chloroquine is this magical drug. I mean, it is an antimalarial.
Probably owns some shares in it or something.
Yeah, but to say that chloroquine is safe is not correct. We know that there's a lot of complications with chloroquine from other diseases, and also it's a scientific tool. Chloroquine. We use it in the lab all the time to literally stop cells from working. So it's not exactly the safest drug.
Yep, cool. So, all right, what else we got here?
If we're going back to conspiracy theories,
you can,
and
I'm not a conspiracy theorist myself, so you can go ahead.
The whole release of the new app that's in Australia about how they want to track your whereabouts and this and that, and
we've got they're bringing out some tracking app that will track where you.
South Korea did it. Yeah, like it's about tracing, virus tracing, so contact tracing.
And it's probably beneficial for certain.
Yeah, but
I mean, we probably don't need it.
The problem with it is that things like this come into place, and then they never go away.
Yes.
So you can look at
it's a precedent.
So you can look at America, for example. It's like 9/11 happened. Okay, we're bringing in the Patriot Act, which means we can spy on everybody. It's just because of 9/11. You still got it.
You look at Edward Snowden. I mean, he is like a great example of someone that fights against stuff like this. Under the guise of protecting the population, you invade a lot of privacy and it's the fine print that people miss.
The problem is they don't wind that stuff back ever. They keep it in place.
Once it's in place, like once you let the devil out of the box, like it's out of the box.
Yeah.
Now, I think Snowden he talks about this recently. He did a interview online. It was one of the I want to say it was one of the Vice networks, which of course Vice always do this kind of stuff. But Vice did an interview with Edward Snowden the last week or two about what it means to have data freely available on everyone's whereabouts in the future. And, his modus operandi, I guess you would say, is to be very conscious of surveillance of huge populations. And, he's worried about it for sure. It got him. It's why he lives in Moscow, because he blew the whistle on this kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, the tracking app stuff is not, it's not right.
It's kind of a thing, like the double-edged sword of it is like you don't trust the community enough, which you probably shouldn't trust the community enough to keep away from one another. I think people go out to parks a lot here, or they do this. Like I've been to a park.
I also like the idea of that idiots will get what's coming to them some of the time.
But the problem is it's the collateral damage.
It does affect everyone else around them. I know that. Yeah. I know that. Yeah.
Well, let me just bring up a Benjamin Franklin quote.
Oh, here we go.
Benjamin Franklin once said, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety."
That's quite, it's profound. I mean, but there's consequences to that too. So I mean, so
shut the fuck up and stop bringing up dumb quotes.
It's not a dumb quote.
I think it's a good quote. It's a relevant quote. But like the problem is like, is it reversible? The liberty that you gave up, is this a reversible thing, or have you changed society forever?
History tells you that liberty that you give up never gets given back.
I think it's like a really interesting thing to think about is like how we function as private people. I think it's going away quicker than ever before because, I always wonder, like, if we shut down Twitter, Facebook tomorrow, will the world be a better place for it? I think so.
Fuck oath.
And, things like contact tracing, though, have really huge benefits when it comes to stopping the virus. The issue there is, like, how do you use it after it? Is there a policy in place for because, like, the data that you get from people from things like this is really valuable to companies. It's so valuable because what it says is, like, all right, Marty goes to, I don't know, Club X every Saturday, so I'm going to target all my ads to Marty's Club X addiction.
And also sell it to other companies that do similar stuff.
Yeah, and it's like, that's the danger of it is, like, you then know exactly where people do everything, and it's beyond the virus at that point.
Yeah.
But they've been.
But we all know that happens. You all know that, like, you look up a pair of shoes, and then the next time you're on Facebook, every ad is about getting a pair of shoes.
Even mention the word shoes, like without any context, and you'll get an ad about it.
Yeah,
exactly, and that's that's what's happened to me plenty of times. Where I think I've said this story a million times. Once I was outside and we had just had some rain, and we were getting these mushrooms growing around the tree I've got out the back, and Julia goes, "Make sure you get rid of those mushrooms in case Bear eats them." That was it. That was all the conversation was. And then when I go on Google, it comes up with mushroom
antifungal.
Yeah, all this mushroom shit comes up on my Google search. I'm like, I never Googled that crap.
But also, in a way, look, I like the progress of digital technology. I think it's really interesting. So
we've all given up our things that we didn't know that we were giving up.
That's fine.
It's not fine.
Yeah, in a way it is, but there's a lot of things in technology that make our lives easier as well, which
no one's disagreeing about that, but
so
you can't.
You not having to look for mushroom removal.
But I was never looking for it,
and that's okay. You can choose to ignore it.
Another example I got is me and Husey were talking, and Husey was asking when I put weed mats out the front. He goes, "Did you put weed mats out the front?" I go, "I did," but what I also did was I staked the weed mats to the ground. Now in my Google feed is just weed mat steaks for sale, $29.99 each. It's mental.
Yeah. Look,
I mean-
you can choose to ignore it though. It's a free piece of software.
I can ignore it,
It is a free piece
but
of
I
software.
can see how they can manipulate millions of people.
It can,
Yeah.
but also they were probably getting manipulated by watching the news and seeing the ads that were targeting that sort of person that watches the news at that sort of time of the day anyway. So
Yep, fine.
Yeah, but look, it's like that's a big concept. But I think it's kind of right now, people are just scrambling to understand how to slow this thing because it's going to kill economies. It's killed millions of jobs here already.
Yep.
Like you, people will do these things. They're very vulnerable to these kind of things.
I don't know how we got onto that topic.
I started with the conspiracy theories, but I'm interested in that, what you just said, actually, the whole economy thing, because I try to conceptualize it. I've been on holidays for like 3 or 4 weeks.
Well, let's quickly just say real quick, Matt, did you know that Stu was getting married?
I was.
Oh, congratulations, mate.
No,
I
was.
and then I had to cancel it.
Oh.
It was supposed to be.
Wait, just make that noise again. Oh.
It was supposed to be March 28th.
He was getting married March 28th, and then some Chinese guy had a fucking sand shrew, and now he couldn't get married.
So anyway, I've been on holidays because I was supposed to be on my fucking honeymoon in Bali, but that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So I've kind of, and I have a job, which I'm very lucky and grateful that I have a job, right? But, and I understand like there's so many people that have lost jobs and this and that. And then I'm like, they're still having, like when this happened right at the start, I was like, the government has to step in and offer these things, which they did. They did JobKeeper.
I know all about
all
that.
that sort of
know all
stuff.
about that.
We don't have to talk about that specifically, but that was my first thought. The government has to step in. They have to have some sort of leverage, which they did, which is great. I knew they would, but there's still that will they, won't they sort of moment.
The JobKeeper stuff is great. It just means that we'll be working.
It does suffer
until we're going to be working until we're about 700 years old.
Yeah. But we were going to, yeah, I know. But the other thing with that, I'm like, the other thing is though, we are staying inside more. Like we're staying home. We're not spending as much money. Most of us aren't spending as much money because we're having to be conscious about, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
So I'm kind of thinking like there's this leveling still. There's kind of like this like still evening out of the plane.
Yep.
The only thing is that I know the effect is now on Australia's economy in terms of the government's backup funds.
And that's why that's why I'm a little, I don't mean this, but I'm just going to be devil's advocate a little bit, and I'm going to be a little bit mean, because the majority of people that I went to uni with, or all the people I went to uni with, all the people I grew up with who dropped out of school and did plumbing apprenticeships and electrician apprenticeships and carpentry apprenticeships, you as well, none of those people are sort of at risk of losing their jobs.
Sure.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, they're fundamental to like growing a society, really.
Yeah.
Like,
It's like they're
I have a job that is absolutely not fundamental to society.
yeah, but so you're worried about losing it?
Oh, I know. I'm going to be self-employed from July onwards. Like,
And that's what I mean. And including in that, are you...
But you're saying that
I'm trying to
that
look
there's
positively
jobs
about
that-
it.
My
jobs that required university training.
My point is that I don't particularly mean. I don't mean this really. I'm just
say
sort of-
it.
I'm just
Say
throwing it out there. It's like the people who did the hard yard, sort of, went to uni when it sucked, got a degree, got a diploma, did a trade when it sucked. That's why they did those things.
Yes.
So that their job was secure. And all the people who are saying, "Oh no, now I don't have a job," it's like, yeah, you don't, because you made coffees. Like
No. What about the people that studied for years to do travel, to be a travel fucking
Agent.
expert?
To be a travel, do you have to study to be a travel?
Well, like the
Yeah,
one
absolutely.
in New York,
Tourism.
I think
Tourism.
the big ones in New York that I personally like have witnessed is artists. So
Yeah. Oh, big time.
so New York is not a city without artists. It's
You
like
could say that about
it's
Melbourne too.
Yeah, it's like this is like a jazz capital. It's an art gallery capital. There's like hospitality is huge here.
Yeah.
So the restaurants get people coming here, the bars do, the music.
Mm-hmm.
These are the things that are affected so heavily, and they're essential to the culture of New York.
Yeah.
So, for example, you look at San Francisco. The thing about San Francisco is it's a tech city now. It used to be a city that was known for its progressive thought, its music, its art, became a tech city, and it's very rich because of it. But culturally, it doesn't improve San Francisco. Now, what happens with this virus is you are now susceptible to companies like Amazon, Google, all these companies from really taking up the real estate of previously culturally important things like music venues,
they'll
bars, restaurants.
Gobble it up.
They can eat it up unless the government say, all right, we're going to help restore these institutions of the city, the bars, the restaurants, the music venues. I don't want New York. The reason I love it here is because it's so interesting in terms of its music and nightlife and everything. That's the thing that makes the city so fun. I don't want to walk down the street and have a bunch of wankers that wear Kathmandu who work at Google running the city. There's already enough areas of that. But it's just not the place I want. And I already know musicians that are stuck at home, can't perform anymore. That's their life.
That's where I come from.
Yeah.
We're getting a bit of feedback now from your sound system. I can hear echoes for some reason.
Sometimes, yeah.
Oh,
did you change anything?
I didn't change anything. No.
Okay. You bloody
never
man.
mind. So I'm seeing like my news feed is musicians because that's who I hang out with all the time. Yep. So I'm seeing a lot of there's a lot of people. I think the undereducation of how to utilize your talents in other ways is very apparent now, because people that channeled all of their energy into playing live gigs, which is fine, right? That's fine, but you need backup plans, I think, and what that's.
But that's kind of what I'm saying a little bit in like, I would have much rather been paid to play guitar as opposed to doing accounting.
Yeah.
The reason why I went with accounting, this isn't the only reason, but it's like because it was secure.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
but what does that matter in?
Not that it matters. I'm just being devil's advocate a little bit. It's like,
but that, I mean, you don't want everyone to take that option, because then you lose so much of the like art in the world.
And I have an argument for that. Is you had no idea that this was going to happen.
No,
why you.
No. Of
you
course,
can go, coronavirus is going to happen. I'm going to have a job because I'm an accountant.
No, of course not. But ignoring a pandemic, it was the safer option, no matter what.
Well, then,
no matter what
at
comes
what
up.
cost though?
This is like really. The virus here is targeting these people that are very vulnerable, but also it's really showing the American system for what it is here, and that's a big point. Capitalism. Here is like the brutality of the wealth gap in America. So a good example of that is like there are reports that to be hospitalized with coronavirus, if you're in an out of network, so what happens is we have like little networks where we can go to the hospital based on your insurance. And if you go to a hospital that's outside of your network, it can cost you up to $75,000 to be treated for coronavirus.
That's
the government aren't covering a lot of it. They say they are, they're not.
And then without getting political again, and then the Democrats go for Biden as opposed to Bernie Sanders.
Yes.
How the fuck does that work out?
A thing that has to be pushed now is like, what Biden will do is improve healthcare. He will. Like what he's saying improves the healthcare we have. It builds on Obama's Affordable Care Act, which is great. It's given millions of people insurance. But what Bernie Sanders said is, in my opinion, the NHS system from England is way better, because what you have is you cut out the middleman, you cut out the private insurance companies that are just ripping the shit out of people right now who are in hospital.
But it's something like if you take 5% of the military budget,
yes, and you can fix this up.
You'll have healthcare for every single person in America.
So what people say here is, oh, we can't do it. Like, it's going to be too expensive. But that's the thing is, what they don't think of is the long game of that. It's like, what right now the system just disproportionately, it's very expensive to be poor in America. So what happens is you don't have insurance. So an injury makes you make these wild decisions about your health. Do I go tend to this illness or do I just ride it out?
Yeah.
And what that does is it just keeps the poor being very poor. And it makes the rich people who are getting the insurance money even richer. It's not a hard thing to understand.
I did see a story of that on Reddit where a guy cut his foot at the beach and he thought, well, I haven't got $5,000 for stitches, so don't worry about it. But then it turned into like gangrene or something. And it crippled him forever.
It happens all the time. But what I think Biden, personally, I thought about this the other day when I was working, and I was like, if this guy doesn't see that healthcare for all, so what he's saying is it's healthcare for all that want it. So what you have there is the private system still exists, but no matter what, you have healthcare. You can have this Affordable Care Act version, and you can opt, if you lose your private healthcare, you have a backup. That is great. That is a huge improvement on what exists. But what I think this has shown, this whole pandemic, it's really highlighted that private healthcare has created such a gap in treatment and affordability that a one-payer system would have helped this so much, because people don't have to call their insurance company anymore if it's a one-payer system. You know exactly what you're entitled to because everyone's entitled to the same thing. And that's what happens in England. It's like, no matter who you are, you go into a hospital in England, you're covered. You don't have that. And then
Same
in the long
Australia.
run,
and that's I mean, you probably know this, but from the outside looking into America, people not living in America are grateful they don't live in America.
yes, people in America are so disappointed with it. Like
it's
for example,
embarrassing. It would be like from the outside looking in, it's like it's an embarrassment to be an American.
Well, one of my close friends, she has to take a treatment called Remicade, which is an inhibitor of inflammation for her Crohn's. She lived in America and had insurance through her work and was able to get Remicade. It was an ordeal to get it, but she would get it. Then she left to do her master's in Scotland. And in Scotland, the NHS just cover it. It's not even a thing. She just gets her Remicade.
Yeah, but the thing is with UK is they're communists, though.
But then what happened with her is coronavirus hits and she's faced with this decision. Do I want to come home and be around my family throughout this crisis, or do I stay in Scotland? And the pivotal factor was she came back to America, she had no insurance, and one dose of Remicade was going to cost her like 15 grand, which was free in England.
Yeah.
So the system is a mess here.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's embarrassing to look at. Because
I think Bernie Sanders had a great point, and I think what he has to do now is what he's done already, Bernie Sanders, is change the way people, even the moderates like Joe Biden, talk about these things, climate change and healthcare. So Joe Biden, if he is elected, is the most progressive president to exist in America. And it could have been more progressive with Bernie Sanders.
And that's so mental that a 78-year-old man who has cognitive decline, he has got dementia, and he's the best option. You put him and Trump on the debate stage, and Trump will eat him alive on stage.
I don't know. I hope not. I think I like Joe Biden. If I were to vote for anyone when it was happening, it was Elizabeth Warren. But she
all right.
She's out.
Let's
Yeah, but anyway, sorry, we won't go into this. But what I'm saying is this whole coronavirus thing.
Stu, you stupid idiot.
But the coronavirus thing has highlighted a lot of problems with the American system. Second response, everyone started buying guns.
Yes.
Because they thought the food was going to run out. so that they thought, I'm going to fucking shoot my way.
Yeah,
Shoot my way out
That
of
was
this
another
one.
thought that I had right at the start. Is now the zombie movies are right.
Get guns.
Yes.
That is a proving, like America is proving that those zombie movies, that's what will happen. Everyone will just kill themselves.
They'll just
Kill each other, sorry.
And I was like, you know, I always get real proud of Australia for that, like the Port Arthur response, because my parents live in Port Arthur, like right near Port Arthur. They work at that historic site where Martin Bryant started the shooting. And, you know, I think my dad, he's interesting because he was working as an engineer for small arms in the military when I was younger. His job was literally to work around guns all the time. I remember as a kid going to the Watsonia barracks and holding model guns or like walking around a military barracks. When Port Arthur happens, they take semi-automatics, automatics, and it enriches a country. Now, people are skeptical of that. Even my dad is sort of skeptical of that, which is, I don't think that correct because there's been no mass shooting since. Whereas here, there's fucking 400 a year or something ridiculous.
Yeah, there was some meme that said like, this is the first month or this is the
no
first
school.
March in 20 years or something.
no school shootings.
shootings.
Yeah, and it's like these are the things that this highlights is like, you know, this is the least emissions from any country in the last 20 years or something.
There's dolphins in Venice now and stuff.
Yeah, it's like the world is enriched for humans not doing the bullshit that we do. And but I don't think I have a lot of faith in the American government to like change their ways because of this. I hope they do, but the way the system is built here, it's like you go through the House, you go through the Senate, you have to have control of these things to make any changes. And you see with Trump's impeachment, for example, it's like the House condemned him, the Senate just threw it away.
And that's why America is brilliant. It's good and bad. It's bad.
It's clever.
It's bad because nothing gets done, but it's brilliant and so well done because no one can take control. That's where I get a bit annoyed when people are like, "Oh, Trump's a dictator." It's like, okay, well, technically he's not at all, and he can't be.
Not.
And you've got actual countries like China who are run by a dictator, and you know, there's a bit of a difference.
But one thing for sure is like I have a really strong love for Americans.
Americans are the best individually.
Individually,
they are the
I
best.
agree.
They're amazing people, and like it sucks to see them go through things like this. And they know, my friends know that there's, like they talk about it all the time. They're so disappointed that they live in this system. It's
embarrassing. Yeah, it's from the outsider looking in, and I always love following America and American policy and politics. It's like, aren't you embarrassed that this is your system? Like I saw do you watch Friendly Geordies on YouTube? The Aussie guy?
I've seen a bit of his stuff. I used to love his Yilmaz stuff.
Yeah, Yilmaz, of course. Yeah. But he did a great thing where Stephen Crowder, you know Stephen Crowder? Steve Crowder? Anyway, he's a conservative comedian.
Prove me wrong or whatever that thing it is.
He was saying how the American healthcare system is much better than America. The American healthcare system is much better than the UK because in the UK, the death rates of people in hospital is higher than in America. And Friendly Geordies goes, it's higher in the UK because they're in hospital.
Yeah.
In the US, they die at home.
Stay at home.
Yeah. Like
that's going to be a big thing with coronavirus is like, let's see how many poor people actually went to hospital. There's a natural fear of going to hospital because you're going to bankrupt your family. The deaths from home is going to be a huge number.
That's
and
mental.
we don't know it yet.
Australians don't comprehend that either. In Australia, it's like you can go to the hospital for treatment.
I have to research
but you got to wait for a few hours. That's the worst.
That was the problem I had with one. I think I might have said this right in the podcast. Joe Rogan drove me mental because I had my ACL done again about 12 months ago, and Joe Rogan.
Mate, just
Chop it off.
Oscar Pistorius today. What are you doing? Your legs are shit.
It's just
don't do anything to Julia. Don't shoot your girlfriend.
Yeah, don't shoot. And Joe Rogan had a UFC fighter on from the UK, and the UFC fighter goes, goes, "Yeah, I just got my ACL done by the NHS," and Joe Rogan goes, "Oh, that's your healthcare system?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, but how long did you have to wait for?" And the UK UFC fighter goes, "Oh, I had to wait about 3 months." Oh, that's the problem with public systems. You got to wait so long. I'm like, yeah, you've got to wait 3 months, as opposed to $80,000.
Yeah.
Like, what do you
As
mean?
opposed to not doing it because it's so fucking expensive.
Yeah, like
you can function with a torn ACL. Like you can live day to day. It's not great, but I mean, you can. It's not like that's an injury. It's not like he had fucking cancer. You know what I mean?
Correct.
Like it's
correct.
And if you get cancer here, you're done. Like financially,
That's
you're
such
cooked.
bullcrap, and it's such bullcrap because in America it's like, oh well, you should have worked harder to afford it.
Yeah, but that's the problem. It's like
the system doesn't.
The people that work the hardest are the people that make the least money. They work 2 jobs. They can't afford healthcare,
if not more.
And it's like, the way the system works is like, honestly, black people, Hispanic people disproportionately work the shittest jobs for the least money and the most hours. And the system is not built for you to get out of that. They tell you that there's this American dream and,
lift yourself up by your bootstraps.
Yeah. And it's like the chances of that, the whole system is built to not allow that.
Should we start wrapping it up?
Yep.
Did you have any quick ones at the end, or if you want to, and then we can close it out.
Couple of easy quick ones.
One was just fuck China, if I got that.
That was mine.
Correct.
That was mine.
Okay, yeah. And I was like,
okay. Do you think it's right to call it the China virus?
Nope.
No,
because Spanish flu was called the Spanish flu because the Spanish were the first to report the flu that was around the trenches in World War One. It's not because it originated in Spain.
No, they did think it originated. It didn't. Obviously, it didn't. At the time, they thought it did. But I haven't got a problem with calling it like the Wuhan flu. I mean, Zika is because it came from the Zika River. I think Bill Maher has a video that just came out where he lists all the viruses that we've got in the world, and all of them, he names the Spanish as well, and he's wrong on that one. They're all named from the place they came from.
I don't see a problem as a scientist calling it COVID-19.
Correct.
Yeah, what's wrong? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that either. When people say calling it China flu is racist, I don't subscribe to that, but I can understand why
colloquialism.
Why people could use it that way.
But like you look at how you got to also listen to the tone when
exactly.
people use it. It is one of contempt. It's not one of like objective thought. It's like they will say like China virus, like it's not
China.
Yeah, he'll say that, and he'll do that weird hand thing.
That comes from China.
Yeah.
China. Okay. Will there be a vaccine? You think yes. This one we sort of didn't touch on, so I'll be very quickly. This current shutdown, how long do you think that'll go for? A year?
The first wave of the virus, I think that the economic growth will outweigh the healthcare information. And I think that a lot of places are going to open prematurely because of the need to make money over the need to protect its people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this first one, probably in May, there'll be a lot of states open in America, but it will be premature, and then we're going to get a second wave, and then everyone will say, oh, why did a second wave happen? And it's just because everyone wanted to make fucking money.
Yeah.
That's
It is a catch-22. I do see both sides. But yeah, I mean, South Korea had having a second wave, and Taiwan's having a second wave.
A second wave's inevitable, right, for anyone.
Yeah.
That's how these things work.
It's how heavy it attacks.
Yeah, it's how heavy and how much you listen to the healthcare professionals. I mean, scientists, I think generally scientists don't have that in mind, the growth of the economy. They have the survival of people in mind, and it conflicts with businesses' ability to make money.
Mm-hmm.
What the government don't want to do is keep bailing people out. It cost them $2.2 trillion the first time, and that's not enough. So they don't want to keep spending $2.2 billion to leave people at home. So there's the trade-off that they face.
No, absolutely. All right, a couple of quick-fire questions. In which town do the Simpsons reside?
Springfield, Illinois.
What is the name of Simpsons' next door neighbor?
Van Houten.
No, next door neighbor.
Flanders.
Who founded the Simpson town?
Jebediah.
How old is Bart?
10.
Oh, is he 10? Yeah, he's 10.
What is the name of Lisa's jazz mentor?
Bleeding Gums Murphy.
Well done, everyone. Fuck, we're good.
I mean, they were pretty...
These are easy as. Who runs the Quickie Mart? Fucking hell.
Who asked that one?
Yeah, I know. All right. Let me see. Anything else?
I would just say thanks for letting me talk about it.
No sweat. Anything else you want to get off your chest?
I think people can't forget about. I think the one thing I really want out of this whole experience in New York, especially, is for people to realize how good it was to be around one another, and take care of one another a bit more when it's over and not forget. I'm sure people will forget, but what I like about this is like people's heads aren't in their own Instagram life anymore when they leave. Like it's all based around this thing that's affecting everyone, their Instagrams, their Twitter and everything. So at least even if they don't want it to be, it's not all about them.
I've got a quick question. What do you think the difference... I know you're not here, but based on what you've seen, what do you think the main differences are in terms of society and difference between America and Australia?
I think Australians naturally are willing to sacrifice a bit quicker than Americans for the good of everyone else. I think here, in terms of as a whole, here the government weren't as quick to wanting to sacrifice things, and I think that caused a lot of problems. But Australia has this mentality of sacrificing, and it's inbuilt. It's like part of being Australian. It's like we celebrate a military failure every year as a way to celebrate how brave Australians are. And, things like that are really testament to the attitude of Australians and their resolve. Americans do have it though. Like they're tough Americans when things get bad. There's a reason why, like when the shit goes down, they're really good to have around.
Oh, they galvanise.
They galvanise really well. But I think the American government is so conflicted right now, and that's the defining factor of the two societies. Is like the Australian government were willing to say this is a problem independent of if you're Labor or Liberal, whereas the Americans are like this is a Democratic hoax versus this is a Republican shit response.
Yeah, you're right. That would be. I mean, I think Trump's an idiot. I do think he'll win the election again. But imagine if Scott Morrison came out and was like, "Oh, this is a Labor hoax." The fuck are you talking about, you fucking idiot?
The perfect example of that is England. Boris Johnson did come out and say this is all nonsense. Then the fucking guy nearly dies and he's thanking the NHS like an idiot.
Exactly. He's an idiot. That was one question that I had here that I just skipped over by accident. And this maybe is where we can end it just about. But the whole herd immunity thing that England were trying to push, mental?
Yeah. Mental, because what it does, the point of isolation is to stop the burden on the healthcare system to treat all the sick people.
Yeah.
It's not about stopping herd immunity building. It's a more gradual acquisition of herd immunity.
It's about not the hospitals collapsing.
You don't want hospitals to collapse because that starts happening. The death rate goes through the roof. And every model tells you that, and every model tells you that social distancing works. So, that was silly at the start, and I'm not surprised that he did that, but I was surprised. I'm not surprised he got it, but then I didn't want him to die. I don't want Trump to die. I don't want Boris Johnson to die. But I do wish that they were just not fucking idiots.
Not closed-minded.
Yeah.
Like it's like just have some awareness of the world, not your world.
But that's what I thought about. I thought about this in mid-February. I was like, why this might be a problem is because look at our world leaders.
Yeah, I know.
Trump, Boris Johnson, Scott Morrison. this might be bad.
Yeah.
This isn't FDR.
Can I
This
tell-
isn't
And I think
Churchill.
I think that's why people are saying Scott Morrison's not doing as bad a job.
Yeah, it's because we expected 0 and he's reached it. He's reached 1.
Can I tell you something about Scott Morrison quick before we go?
Yeah, you met him. Yeah.
Yeah, so the UN General Assembly is like 5 blocks up the street from me, and all the leaders are in town. So I was walking up 2nd Avenue to get some ramen, and there was like a group of about, I don't know, I was on the phone to Pete at the time, my brother Pete, and we were just chatting away, and there was a group of maybe like 6 or 7 people walking toward me, and in the middle was Scott Morrison. And so I turned to one of his entourage and I'm like, oh, is that the Prime Minister? And Scott Morrison turned to me and said, it sure is, mate. And then proceeded to talk to me for about 10 minutes, nicest bloke. And like, as much as I'm like this, you know, I'm a relatively liberal guy, I would say. I could not, when you're faced with him one-on-one, he's talking to you and he's complimenting your job and wishing you all the best. I can't be like, you wanted to stop the boat. So I just it didn't cross my mind.
I know. They're very personable.
And then
which is weird because when you watch them in their fucking little politics isolation room where they argue,
you
like these guys are socially fucked. Like,
Yeah, but that's
so
how they
good.
got there.
that is how they got there. Yep.
Yeah, and then so Pete's on the phone. I'm just kind of holding him away from the conversation. And I get back on the phone and Pete's like, who was that? And I'm like, Scott Morrison. It was crazy. And I start sort of saying, oh, he was asking about my job. Like, he pumped my tires up, basically. And Pete was like, oh, Mr. Lefty.
Yeah.
He's like, Mr. Lefty, you're down with Scott Morrison. And look at you now. You're gushing over.
But those people in those high positions, that's how they got
Correct.
there.
They play that game.
They're sociopaths. They're able to get you on side. I know one guy who is super successful. I spoke to him about 4 years ago. We did a little bit of work together and he's worth a shit ton of money. And I told him about Bear. I said, oh, yeah, he told me about the dog. 4 years later, he goes, oh, how's Bear?
Yeah.
Like, how the fuck did you remember that, you psycho?
Yeah. But it's like, it's a skill. I mean,
It is a skill.
I wouldn't vote for the guy, but like, fuck, he was charming. I'll tell you that.
Nice one.
All right, Matt.
Matt,
you're a lord.
legend.
Thanks, pal.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much for having me, guys.
What are you doing the rest of today? What time is it there? About 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock?
It's 9:20 a.m. So I'm going to be testing tonight from 5 till midnight, and before then I'll just sit around in my apartment. I'm watching the World War II in color documentary.
World War I or World War II on Netflix?
Two.
Okay. Peter Jackson's one on World War I was
that was so
fucking
good.
hell.
I haven't watched it. I've got it. I haven't
mental.
watched it. Yeah.
Fucking mental.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just going to watch a bit of that and exercise and yeah, there's nothing else I can do at the moment.
All right, you're a king.
Legend.
We'll see how this thing pans out, and we might talk to you again maybe a month or a month and a half or 2 months. Who knows?
Sounds great. Thanks,
All right.
guys.
Thanks, Lord.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, boys.
See you, bro.
All right. Nice.
And we're done.
Yeah. Do you want to do a little debrief that I can edit in or a pre-brief or just a brief?
Oh, not really. What's been going on with you?
No, do you want to do an introduction that I'll put like at the start or something like that?
Nah. You can just leave this all. So you didn't get married?
Didn't get married?
Fucking these bloody Chinese bastards eating fucking sand shrews. I
Careful,
love
they're
Matt.
listening. They're listening on my TikTok.
Yeah, I know they are. I love Matt and he's the best.
He's a
but
legend.
I mean, you know, fuck China. I'm sorry, I've had half a bottle of this.
All right, sweet as.
Okay, all good?
Yep.
All right, see you later.